Welcome to Read and Learn English. Today, we are not just going to read another story for English practice. Today, we are going to listen to a story that feeds the heart, a story that has inspired millions of people for thousands of years. This is the story of Buddha, a calm, emotional, and deeply meaningful journey about awakening, kindness, and inner peace. If you are learning English, this story is for you. It is written for Level 2 learners using gentle and clear language that helps you improve your listening, vocabulary, and pronunciation while discovering one of the greatest life lessons ever told. Before we begin, I want you to take a slow, deep breath. Leave your worries for a moment and imagine yourself in ancient India, a land of green forests, quiet rivers, and peaceful temples. Somewhere in that land, a young prince named Siddhartha begins a journey that will change not only his life, but the hearts of people all around the world. This is not a story about power or wealth. It is a story about searching for meaning, about leaving comfort, to understand why people suffer and how we can find peace even in the middle of pain. It's about learning to see the world clearly, with compassion and understanding. As you listen, try to feel the calm rhythm of each sentence. Repeat the words softly if you want to practice your speaking. You'll find that every part of this story helps you not only learn English, but also think deeply about your own life. So, if you're ready, sit comfortably. Let your mind be quiet and your heart open. And if you enjoy stories like this, stories that teach English through emotion, wisdom, and beautiful storytelling, please don't forget to subscribe to Read and Learn English. It helps this channel grow and allows us to share more inspiring lessons with you. Now, let's begin this journey together, the story of Buddha, a story for the heart, the mind, and the soul. The birth of a prince. Long ago in the ancient land of India, there was a small kingdom called Kapilavastu. It was a peaceful place surrounded by green hills, quiet rivers, and golden fields. The people there lived simple lives. They farmed, sang, and prayed to the rising sun each morning. Their king, Suddhodana, was a wise and kind man. He ruled his people with fairness and care. His queen, Maya, was loved for her gentleness and beauty. But there was one thing they wished for, more than anything: a child. For many years, the royal couple prayed to the gods, hoping for a baby. One night, Queen Maya had a strange and beautiful dream. She dreamed that a white elephant holding a lotus flower in its trunk entered her heart. When she woke up, she felt a deep peace inside her. Wise men in the palace told her that the dream was a good sign. It meant a great and holy child would soon be born. Months later, on a warm spring morning, the queen began her journey to visit her parents in a nearby city. Along the way, her group stopped to rest in a beautiful garden called Lumbini Grove. The air was full of the scent of flowers, and gentle wind moved through the trees. There, under the shade of a tall sal tree, Queen Maya gave birth to a baby boy. The birds sang above her, and the earth seemed to glow with light. The moment the child was born, legend says that lotus flowers bloomed beneath his feet as he took his first steps. The people of the kingdom rejoiced. They celebrated for days with music and dance. King Suddhodana named his son Siddhartha, which means the one who brings peace. Everyone believed this child was special, a gift to the world. Soon after his birth, the king invited a wise old man, a sage named Asita, to visit the palace. Asita looked at the baby's face carefully. His eyes were bright and calm, unlike any child he had ever seen. He smiled, but there were tears in his eyes. The king asked, "Wise one, why do you smile, and why do you cry?" Asita replied softly, "I smile because this child will grow to be a great teacher. His words will bring peace to millions. But I cry because I am old and will not live to hear his teachings." The king was deeply moved. He bowed to the sage and promised to raise the boy with wisdom and care. As the years passed, the young prince grew strong and healthy. He was loved by everyone in the palace. The nurses said he never cried for long. His smile could calm even the angriest heart. Queen Maya, however, did not live long after his birth. When the prince was only 7 days old, she passed away peacefully, leaving the baby in the care of her sister, Prajapati, who raised him as her own. Though the boy never knew his mother, he carried her kindness in his eyes. From the beginning, Siddhartha was different. While other children laughed and played, he often sat quietly, watching the clouds or listening to the wind. He was gentle with animals and spoke softly to everyone, even servants and guards. One day, as a small child, he saw a wounded bird fall from the sky. The other boys ran to catch it for fun, but Siddhartha lifted it gently in his hands and asked his father's permission to care for it. When the king agreed, the young prince said, "Father, all lives wish to be free and happy. Even this bird feels pain as we do." His father smiled with pride, but deep down he worried. The prophecy of the wise sage still echoed in his mind. "This child will not stay in the palace," Asita had said. "He will seek the truth beyond the walls." King Suddhodana wanted his son to become a great ruler, not a holy man. He believed happiness came from wealth, power, and family. So he built high walls around the palace and filled Siddhartha's life with every pleasure: music, fine clothes, gardens, and games. The king hoped that if the boy never saw pain or sadness, he would never wish to leave. And for many years, it worked. Siddhartha grew up surrounded by beauty. Every morning he studied with wise teachers who taught him art, writing, and philosophy. Every afternoon he rode horses, practiced archery, and listened to the soft sound of harps and flutes. The palace glowed with golden light, and laughter filled the air. But sometimes, in quiet moments, the young prince would stand at the palace gate and look beyond the walls. He saw the mountains in the distance and the narrow roads leading away from the city. A question began to grow in his heart. What lies beyond these walls? When he asked his father, the king would smile and say, "Beyond the walls, my son, is nothing you need to see. Everything you could ever want is here." Yet even with all the beauty around him, Siddhartha felt a strange emptiness. He often sat in the royal gardens at night, looking at the moon reflected on the water. "Why am I not happy?" he would whisper to himself. "Why does my heart feel heavy when I have everything?" Sometimes he remembered the story of his birth, the lotus flowers, the shining earth, the wise man's words. He did not yet understand them, but he felt they held a secret meant for him. He was still young, but deep inside he already felt the soft pull of a destiny waiting beyond comfort, beyond luxury, and beyond the golden walls of the palace. And so began the quiet stirring of a journey that would change not only his life, but the hearts of millions across the world. A journey from wealth to wisdom, from ignorance to understanding, and from silence to peace. the protected palace. Years passed, and Prince Siddhartha grew into a handsome, intelligent young man. His teachers said he was quick to understand everything. He could learn new skills faster than anyone in the palace, riding horses, writing poetry, even solving questions about philosophy and life. But what made him special was not his cleverness. It was his kindness. He spoke gently to everyone, to the servants, the guards, and even the smallest animals in the royal garden. The people of the kingdom loved their prince. They said his smile brought peace, and his words made them feel safe. His father, King Suddhodana, was proud, but he was also afraid. He remembered the prophecy of the old sage who had said that his son would one day leave the palace to search for truth. The king wanted to stop that from happening. He wanted Siddhartha to become a great ruler, not a holy man who walked away from power. So, the king built even higher walls around the palace and filled Siddhartha's world with joy and comfort. Musicians played soft songs each evening. The gardens were filled with flowers of every color. Servants brought delicious food, and dancers performed under golden lights. Inside the palace, there was no sadness, no sickness, and no sign of death. The king ordered that no old or sick person should ever be seen by the prince. He believed that if Siddhartha never saw pain, he would never want to look for answers. For many years, the plan seemed to work. Siddhartha enjoyed his life, but he also remained thoughtful and quiet. He often sat beside the lotus pond and watched the fish move slowly under the water. Sometimes, he would pick up a fallen flower and wonder why something so beautiful had to fade so soon. When he was 16, the king decided it was time for Siddhartha to marry. He believed marriage would keep the prince happy and busy. A great festival was held in the palace. All the noble families came to see the young prince. Among them was a kind and graceful woman named Yasodhara. She was intelligent and gentle, and her eyes shone with understanding. Siddhartha liked her from the moment they spoke. She shared his calm nature and his love for peace. Soon they were married in a beautiful ceremony filled with music, flowers, and laughter. After the wedding, life in the palace became even more joyful. Siddhartha and Yasodhara spent their days walking in the gardens, playing music, and learning together. They talked about the stars, the changing seasons, and the meaning of kindness. Everyone in the kingdom believed their prince was the happiest man in the world. But sometimes, in the quiet hours of night, Siddhartha still felt something he could not name, a soft emptiness inside. When the palace was silent and the moonlight filled his room, he would stand at the window and look beyond the walls. He saw the dark shapes of the mountains far away and felt a strange pull in his heart. Why do I feel this way? He asked himself. I have everything. I have love, comfort, and respect. Yet something is missing. One evening, he asked Yasodhara, "Do you ever wonder why we are here? Why people are born and die? Why flowers bloom only to fall?" She looked at him softly and said, "Maybe we are not meant to know everything, my love. Maybe peace comes from accepting what is." Her words were kind, but Siddhartha's heart was not satisfied. He smiled and nodded, but deep inside, his questions grew stronger. As time went on, his father continued to protect him from the world. When people in the city became sick or old, they were kept away from the prince's eyes. The king ordered that the streets be cleaned and decorated, whenever Siddhartha went outside. Everyone he met looked young and happy. The king's plan worked for a long time, until one morning, Siddhartha asked to see the countryside beyond the palace walls. "Father," he said, "I have never seen the world outside. May I ride through the city, just once?" The king hesitated. He wanted to say no, but he was afraid of his son's growing curiosity. So he agreed, but he secretly ordered the roads to be cleared and filled only with healthy, smiling people. The next day, Siddhartha left the palace for the first time. He rode in a golden chariot beside his loyal servant, Channa. The streets were full of music, flowers, and laughter, just as the king had ordered. The people cheered when they saw their prince, and Siddhartha smiled back. For a moment, he believed his father had been right. The world was beautiful and peaceful. But as the chariot turned a corner, something unexpected happened. In the crowd, Siddhartha saw a man with white hair and wrinkled skin, walking slowly with a stick. His hands shook, and his back was bent. The prince looked at him with surprise. He had never seen anyone like that before. "Channa," he asked, "what is wrong with that man?" "Nothing is wrong, my lord," Channa said softly. "He is just old. All people grow old one day." Siddhartha was silent. He looked again at the man's trembling hands, his tired eyes. "Will I also grow old?" he asked. "Yes, my lord," Channa replied. "Everyone will." The joy of the morning suddenly disappeared. Siddhartha could think of nothing else. The music around him sounded empty. When he returned to the palace, his heart was heavy with a new feeling, fear mixed with sadness. That night, as the moonlight touched the window, he whispered to himself, "If everyone must grow old and weak, then what is the meaning of youth and beauty?" The next morning, he asked to go outside again, and this time the king could not stop him. What Siddhartha would see next would change his life forever. The foresight. The next morning, the sky was soft and bright, and a warm breeze moved through the palace gardens. But Prince Siddhartha's heart was heavy. The image of the old man would not leave his mind. He had never imagined that life could change so much, that strength could fade, and beauty could disappear. For the first time, he began to see the palace differently. The golden halls, the flowers, the laughter. They all seemed temporary, like dreams that would soon fade away. Still, the king noticed his son's sadness and tried to make him smile again. He invited musicians, dancers, and poets to entertain the prince, but Siddhartha's thoughts were elsewhere. He wanted to see more of the world. He needed to understand. So once again, he asked Channa to take him beyond the palace walls. This time, the streets were not completely prepared. The king's men had cleaned them, but they had missed one small corner of the road. As the chariot passed by, Siddhartha saw a man lying by the side of the street, shaking and coughing. His face was pale, and his body was thin and weak. Siddhartha's eyes widened. "What is wrong with him, Channa?" he asked. "My lord," Channa replied sadly, "he is sick. Sometimes the body becomes weak and cannot fight against illness. All people can become sick, rich or poor, young or old." Siddhartha felt a deep sadness in his chest. "Will I also become sick one day?" he asked quietly. "Yes, my lord," Channa said softly. "No one can escape sickness." The prince looked at the sick man again, and his heart filled with compassion. He wanted to help, but he did not know how. If this is part of life, he thought, then why do we pretend it doesn't exist? Why do we hide from it? When he returned to the palace, Siddhartha was silent. The music and laughter felt distant again. He began to see that the world outside his walls was not the same as the world inside them. There was beauty, yes, but also pain. There was joy, but also suffering. Days later, Siddhartha went out once more. This time, the road was quiet. Birds flew low, and the sound of the wheels on the path echoed softly. As they turned a corner, the prince saw something that made him freeze. In front of him was a group of people carrying a body wrapped in white cloth. Their faces were sad, and tears ran down their cheeks. The chariot stopped. Siddhartha stepped down and whispered, "What are they doing?" Channa bowed his head. "My lord, that man has died. His body no longer breathes. His spirit has left. Death comes to everyone, just as night follows day." Siddhartha stared at the white cloth. The people placed flowers on it, and the sound of their crying filled the air. He felt a pain in his heart stronger than anything before. "So," he said slowly, "first we are young, then we grow old. We become sick, and then we die. Is this the fate of all living things?" Channa nodded sadly. "Yes, my lord. It is the way of life." For a long time, the prince did not speak. The truth was simple, but it felt heavy, like a mountain on his chest. Everything he had known, comfort, laughter, and beauty, seemed so small compared to this truth. That night, he walked through the silent palace. The candles flickered, and the shadows danced on the golden walls. He looked at the sleeping faces of his friends, his servants, and his wife, Yasodhara. They will all grow old, he thought. They will all suffer and die, and I will too. How can there be happiness when everything ends? He could not sleep that night. The questions grew stronger. "There must be something beyond this," he whispered. "There must be a way to end suffering." The next morning, the prince decided to take one more ride beyond the palace, one last journey to understand life. As the chariot rolled through the quiet streets, the prince saw something different from before. A man in orange robes walked slowly along the path. His head was shaved, his face calm, and his eyes peaceful. He carried a small bowl and looked neither to the left nor right. Siddhartha watched him closely. The man's clothes were simple, but his expression was full of light. There was no fear or sadness in his face, only peace. "Who is that man?" Siddhartha asked. "That is a monk," Channa explained. "He has left his home and family to search for truth. He owns nothing and desires nothing. He lives to find peace in his heart." Siddhartha's eyes softened. "He has nothing, yet he looks happier than anyone I know." Channa nodded. "Some say true peace comes not from gold or power, but from understanding oneself." Siddhartha was silent for a long time. He felt as if a door had opened in his mind. For the first time, he saw that peace was not something outside. It was something within. When he returned to the palace, the world felt different. The walls that once protected him now felt like a cage. The songs and dances that once made him smile now felt meaningless. He looked at the life around him, the rich clothes, the golden halls, the endless celebrations, and felt a deep sadness. That evening, he walked to the garden where he and Yasodhara often sat. The moon shone on the lotus pond, and the night air was cool. Yasodhara joined him and asked, "Why do you look so troubled, my love?" Siddhartha turned to her gently. "Because I have seen the truth," he said. "People grow old, they suffer, and they die. I have everything, yet I am not free from fear. I must find a way to end this suffering, not just for myself, but for all people." Yasodhara touched his hand softly. "Then follow your heart," she whispered. "If your heart is pure, it will lead you to truth." Siddhartha looked at her lovingly. "You are wise, my dear. One day, I will understand what peace truly means." He didn't yet know it, but his life was about to change forever. The four sights, old age, sickness, death, and the peaceful monk had awakened something deep inside him. A flame of understanding had begun to burn in his heart, and it would guide him toward a path that would change the world. The great decision. The night was quiet. The moon shone gently over the palace of Kapilavastu. Everyone was asleep, but Prince Siddhartha sat awake near his window. The silver light touched the walls, and the sound of night insects filled the air. He could not close his eyes. For many days he had tried to return to his old life, the music, the games, the laughter. But his heart no longer belonged there. The sights he had seen outside the palace, the old man, the sick man, the dead man, and the peaceful monk, had opened his eyes. He now understood that life was not only joy and beauty, it was also pain and loss. He had everything: love, wealth, respect, and comfort. But he felt a deep sadness he could not explain. He looked around the golden room and thought, "All these treasures cannot protect me from sickness, from age, or from death." That night, he walked quietly through the sleeping palace. The halls were filled with the soft glow of oil lamps. He saw the guards resting, the musicians asleep beside their instruments, and the flowers in the courtyard closing their petals for the night. When he reached the door to his wife's room, he stopped. Inside, Yasodhara was sleeping peacefully, their newborn son resting in her arms. The baby's small face was soft and innocent. Siddhartha felt a wave of love and pain at the same time. He whispered, "My little one, my dear wife, I love you more than anything, but I cannot stay. I must find a way to end the pain of this world, for you, for our son, and for everyone." He stepped closer, but then stopped himself. He wanted to hold the baby, but he feared that if he touched him, he would never have the strength to leave. So, he stood there silently, memorizing their faces, the woman who had shared his heart and the child who carried his blood. A tear fell from his eye, and he turned away. Outside, his loyal servant Channa waited beside the prince's horse, Kanthaka. The horse moved quietly, as if it understood the weight of that moment. "My lord," Channa whispered, "are you sure you wish to leave? The world beyond is hard and uncertain. Here, you have everything." Siddhartha looked up at the night sky. "That is why I must go," he said softly. "I have lived in comfort all my life, but I have not known truth. If I stay, I will remain blind. If I leave, I may find the way that ends all suffering." Channa bowed his head. "Then let me come with you." Siddhartha smiled gently. "No, my friend. You have served me well, but this path is mine alone. Take care of the king and my family. Tell them that I seek not power, but peace." He climbed onto the horse, and the two of them rode quietly through the sleeping city. The moonlight fell on the roofs, and the wind whispered through the trees. It was a peaceful night, yet every step of the horse felt like a farewell. When they reached the edge of the city, Siddhartha stopped and looked back. The palace walls shone faintly in the distance, the place where he had been born, raised, and loved. Everything I have known is behind those walls, he thought, but everything I must learn lies beyond them. He stepped down from the horse and took off his royal jewelry, his golden rings, his necklace, his sword. He handed them to Channa. "Take these to my father," he said. "Tell him I do not go out of disrespect or anger. I go because I must understand the truth of life. Tell him I will not return until I find the way to end suffering." Channa's eyes filled with tears. "My lord, I will do as you ask. But please be safe." Siddhartha nodded, then turned to his horse and gently stroked its mane. "You have carried me well, my friend," he whispered. "This is your last journey with me." The horse neighed softly, as if it understood. Then Siddhartha took his sword, cut off his long hair, and removed his princely clothes. He placed them neatly on the ground. From his bag, he took a simple robe, the robe of a monk, and wrapped it around his body. In that moment, the prince became a seeker. The palace prince was gone. Only the man in search of truth remained. He stood tall and calm beneath the starlit sky. His face was peaceful, but his eyes were full of determination. The cool wind touched his skin, and for the first time he felt free. As dawn began to break, Siddhartha looked toward the rising sun. "From this day forward," he said softly, "I will walk the path of wisdom. I will find the cause of pain, and I will find the way to peace." He walked into the forest with steady steps, barefoot, alone, and unafraid. Back at the palace, when morning came, the news spread quickly. The king was heartbroken. Yasodhara wept quietly, holding her child close. "May his journey bring peace to all," she whispered. In the forest, Siddhartha began his new life, a life without gold, without servants, without walls. The journey ahead would be long and difficult, but his heart was clear. He no longer searched for comfort. He searched for truth. Years of searching. The forest was quiet except for the sound of wind moving through the trees. Birds called softly in the distance, and the air smelled of earth and rain. Siddhartha walked barefoot along narrow paths, his robe light against his skin, his mind full of questions. He had left behind a life of comfort and power. Now he had nothing, no food, no shelter, no gold, but his heart was peaceful. Each step he took felt like a promise to himself. I will not stop until I find the truth. For many days he wandered from one village to another. Sometimes kind people gave him food and water. Sometimes he went hungry. He slept under trees and used his hands as a pillow. But he never complained. He was no longer a prince. He was a seeker. One morning, he met a group of holy men sitting under a tree beside a river. Their faces were calm, and their eyes seemed full of light. Siddhartha bowed to them and asked, "Can you help me understand why people suffer?" One of the men, an old sage with white hair, smiled gently. "We have learned that suffering comes from the mind," he said. "Control your thoughts, and you will find peace." Siddhartha listened carefully. He joined them, sitting in meditation from sunrise to sunset. He learned to breathe slowly and quiet his mind. Days turned into months, and his thoughts grew still. He felt peace for a time, but it did not last. When he opened his eyes, he still saw pain in the world around him. People were hungry, sick, and afraid. He thanked the sages and continued his journey. Their wisdom is deep, he thought. but it is not yet the truth I seek. He walked farther, into thick forests and across rivers. Sometimes he stayed with monks who practiced extreme fasting and silence. They believed that by denying the body, one could free the spirit. Siddhartha decided to try their way. He stopped eating more than a few grains of rice each day. He drank only a little water. His body grew thin, his ribs showed through his skin, and his strength faded, but his will was strong. If suffering is caused by desire, he told himself, then I will destroy all desire, even the desire to live. Years passed. His body became weak, but his spirit remained sharp. He meditated for long hours under the hot sun and through cold nights. Sometimes he fell into deep trances and felt nothing but emptiness. For a moment, he thought he was close to enlightenment. But again, peace did not stay. His body was too tired, his mind too heavy. One morning, as he sat beside a river, a young girl from a nearby village came by carrying a bowl of rice milk. She saw Siddhartha sitting there, thin and pale, and her eyes filled with sadness. "Holy man," she said softly, "please take this. You look weak." At first, Siddhartha wanted to refuse. I must not accept comfort, he thought. But his body trembled, and he realized something new. His suffering had become another form of desire, a desire to escape the world. He looked up at the girl and smiled gently. "Thank you, child," he said. He took the bowl and drank slowly. The rice milk was warm and sweet. As the food entered his body, his mind became clear. At that moment, he understood something simple yet powerful. Extreme hunger and extreme comfort were both prisons. Neither led to peace. He whispered to himself, "Neither luxury nor pain can bring truth. The path must be a middle way, balanced, calm, and kind." He washed his hands in the river and felt the cool water flow between his fingers. The birds sang above him, and the world seemed alive again. The sunlight touched his face, and he felt gratitude. Siddhartha stood up, stronger than before. He knew that his body was not an enemy. It was a vessel, a bridge between the world and his spirit. If he wanted to find enlightenment, he needed both strength and stillness. He left the group of ascetics who had followed him. They were shocked. "You have given up," one of them said. Siddhartha smiled calmly. "No," he replied. "I have given up nothing. I have only found a better way." He walked to a place called Bodh Gaya, where a large Bodhi tree grew beside the river. Its leaves shone green and gold under the sun. The air around it felt peaceful, as if the earth itself was waiting. Siddhartha looked at the tree and said quietly, "This is the place. Here I will sit. I will not move until I find the truth that ends all suffering." He sat down under the tree, crossed his legs, and closed his eyes. His breath was steady, his mind focused. The world around him faded. There was only silence, stillness, and the beating of his heart. Days turned into nights, and nights turned into days. He faced hunger, cold, and temptation, but his spirit did not move. Memories rose and fell like waves, but he watched them pass without fear. He remembered his life as a prince, his wife and child, his teachers and friends. He saw the faces of the old, the sick, and the dying. He saw the suffering of all living beings, and through it all, he kept his heart open. As the days passed, his mind grew brighter, like the morning sky before dawn. He began to see clearly the world's endless circle of birth, pain, and death. He saw that all suffering came from desire and ignorance, the clinging of the heart to what cannot last. He breathed deeply and whispered, "When the heart lets go, peace begins." The wind moved softly through the leaves above him, and the light of understanding began to rise like the sun. Siddhartha was now ready for what would come next, the moment of awakening that would change the world forever. Under the Bodhi tree. Siddhartha sat quietly beneath the Bodhi tree. The earth was cool beneath him, and the night air was still. Above him, the leaves moved softly in the wind, making a gentle sound like whispers of wisdom. The moon hung full and bright in the sky. He crossed his legs, placed his hands on his knees, and closed his eyes. His breath was slow and deep. His heart was calm, but his mind was strong. "I will not rise from this place," he said to himself, "until I find the truth that ends all suffering." The night deepened. The world around him grew silent, as if holding its breath. Even the stars seemed to wait. At first his thoughts came quickly, memories of his childhood, the faces of his parents, his wife Yasodhara, and his little son. The comfort of the palace and the pain of leaving it. The hunger, the fasting, the teachings of the wise men. Each memory appeared like a wave, and then slowly faded away. Siddhartha let them pass without holding on. He had learned that peace was not in escaping thoughts, but in not clinging to them. Then came temptation. The ancient stories say that Mara, the spirit of illusion and desire, appeared before him. Mara whispered, "Why do you sit here starving? Go back to your palace. Your wife loves you. Your child needs you. You can still be a king." Siddhartha's heart was calm. He opened his eyes and looked at the shadows before him. "I know who you are," he said softly. "You are not my enemy. You are the voice of fear and desire. You have no power over one who sees clearly." Mara grew angry. The winds howled, and the ground trembled. Dark shapes filled the sky, storms, fire, and noise. But Siddhartha did not move. His face was peaceful, his breath steady. He touched the earth with one hand and said, "The earth is my witness. I will not be moved." And then the storm disappeared. The night became quiet again. Hours passed. The stars faded, and a soft light began to rise in the east. Siddhartha sat still as the sky slowly changed from black to deep blue, and then to gold. As dawn approached, something within him began to shift. His mind grew clear like a still lake. He began to see the world as it truly was, not through the eyes of desire or fear, but through understanding. He saw that all living beings are connected, like threads in a single web. He saw that suffering is born from ignorance and attachment, from wanting things to stay when they cannot. He saw that peace comes not from escaping life, but from accepting it with compassion and wisdom. He saw the endless circle of birth, life, death, and rebirth, the wheel of existence that never stops turning. And he saw the way to step beyond that wheel, by letting go of craving, by living with kindness, and by understanding the truth of change. At that moment, as the first rays of sunlight touched his face, Siddhartha opened his eyes. The world around him glowed softly. The birds began to sing. The air felt alive. Everything, the trees, the earth, the sky, seemed filled with peace. In that silence, he smiled. The truth had come not as thunder, but as a quiet light in his heart. He whispered to himself, "I am awake." The morning light grew brighter, and the man who had once been a prince was no longer Siddhartha, the seeker. He was now the Buddha, the awakened one. He sat beneath the Bodhi tree for 7 days, his heart open and still. He watched the sunrise and sunset, the people passing by, the animals moving gently in the forest. Everything was the same, yet everything was different. The Buddha no longer saw the world as full of enemies or fears. He saw only connection, the soft, invisible bond between all living things. He felt compassion for everyone, for those who suffered, and even for those who caused suffering. He realized that people are not bad. They are simply lost in their own ignorance and pain. If they could see clearly, they too would find peace. When the 7th day ended, he stood up slowly. His body was light, and his steps were steady. The leaves above him shimmered as if they were blessing him. He looked at the tree with gratitude and said, "You have sheltered me in my search for truth. May you stand forever as a symbol of peace." The tree became sacred from that day, the Bodhi tree, the tree of awakening. The Buddha then walked toward a small village nearby. Along the way, he saw the same world he had seen before, people working, laughing, and struggling. But now he saw it all with love. He no longer felt fear or sadness. He saw life as a flowing river, sometimes calm, sometimes wild, but always moving forward. He was ready to teach others what he had discovered, the truth that had freed his heart. The Buddha's journey of searching was over, but his journey of teaching had just begun. The first teaching. For many days after his awakening, the Buddha stayed near the Bodhi tree in silence. He felt deep peace in his heart. He no longer wondered who he was or why people suffered. The answers had come to him like light rising over darkness. He could now see clearly how pain begins, how it grows, and how it can end. But for a while, he said nothing. He sat quietly, watching the river, listening to the wind, and feeling the earth beneath his hands. Some people who passed by saw his calm face and shining eyes. They stopped and asked, "Holy man, who are you? Are you a god?" The Buddha smiled softly and said, "I am not a god. I am not an angel or a spirit. I am awake." He spoke these words gently, and they carried truth. But most people did not understand them yet. After 7 weeks of meditation, the Buddha decided it was time to share what he had learned. He thought of the 5 men he had once practiced with, the ones who had left him when he began to eat again. "They will understand," he said to himself. "I will go to them." He began walking north to a place called Sarnath, near a small park known as the Deer Park. The road was long and dusty, but he felt no pain. The trees gave shade, and the birds sang softly above him. Every step felt peaceful, every breath full of gratitude. When he arrived at the park, he saw the 5 monks sitting under a tree. At first, they turned away. They still believed he had failed in his search. But as he walked closer, they felt something different. His face was calm, and his presence was gentle but powerful. They could see that something had changed. When he spoke, his voice was soft, but it carried great strength. "My friends," he said, "I have found the way. Listen carefully, for what I have discovered can free all people from suffering." The monks sat quietly, their eyes fixed on him. The Buddha began to teach them about life. He said that every life has moments of pain. When we are born, we cry. We grow old. We become sick. We lose what we love. Even the richest or most powerful cannot escape this truth. Suffering is part of life. He said that suffering begins from desire. When we want things to last forever, we create pain. When we wish to hold what must change, we suffer. Desire, greed, anger, and ignorance. These are the roots of sorrow. We suffer not because life is cruel, but because we do not understand it. Then he told them that suffering can end. Just as fire goes out when it runs out of fuel, pain can end when we stop feeding it with desire. When the heart lets go, peace begins. Finally, he spoke of the way to end suffering. It was called the middle path, the way of balance, not too hard and not too soft, not too much and not too little. It was a life of wisdom, kindness, and mindfulness. He explained that peace could be found when people live with right understanding, right thought, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. These are the steps to freedom. They help us see the world as it truly is and guide us to live with compassion and truth. The Buddha paused and looked at his friends. This path, he said, is the way to peace. It is not about escaping the world, but about understanding it. It is not about punishing yourself or seeking pleasure, but about finding balance. When we follow this path, the mind becomes clear and the heart becomes free. The monks sat silently, moved by his words. For the first time, they truly understood what the middle way meant. Not a life of luxury, not a life of pain, but a life of balance and wisdom. Then the Buddha said something even more powerful. Each of you can find truth for yourself. I am not here to give you something new. I am only showing what has always been there, the light within your own heart. The monks bowed deeply. They felt as if a great weight had been lifted from their souls. From that day, they became the Buddha's first disciples, the beginning of a community that would one day reach across the world. As the sun set over the deer park, golden light filled the trees. The air was warm, and peace seemed to flow like water through everything. The Buddha smiled gently. The wheel of teaching has begun to turn, he said, and it will never stop. The followers and the journey. After his first teaching at the deer park, the Buddha stayed with the 5 monks for many days. They listened carefully to his words and practiced the path he showed them. Their minds became calm, and their hearts began to open. The Buddha no longer traveled alone. He now had followers, students, and friends who shared his dream of ending suffering through understanding. But he never called himself a master, and he never called them servants. He said, I am only a guide. You must each walk the path yourself. News of the Buddha's peace began to spread across the land. People from nearby villages came to see him. They had heard of a man who had given up his throne to search for truth, and who now walked the world with a calm smile and eyes full of kindness. Some came out of curiosity, some came in pain, and some came with questions that had no answers. The Buddha welcomed them all. He never asked about their class, their wealth, or their religion. He saw only the human heart. As he walked from village to village, people followed him carrying small bowls of food or flowers. They called him the Blessed One, though he never asked for a title. When someone asked him what to call his new community, he said simply, "We are seekers of truth." Men and women joined him from every background, farmers, teachers, merchants, and even kings. Many left their homes to walk beside him, wearing simple robes and carrying only a bowl. They ate whatever was given, slept wherever the earth allowed, and lived by 3 simple rules: to do good, to avoid harm, and to keep the mind pure. The Buddha's days were peaceful, but full of purpose. Each morning, he rose before the sun and walked quietly through the villages with his bowl. He accepted whatever people offered: a handful of rice, a piece of fruit, a little milk, and thanked them with a smile. He then sat under a tree or by a river, teaching anyone who came to listen. He never forced his words on anyone. If people asked, he taught. If they did not, he remained silent. His silence was as powerful as his speech. Once, a proud man came to test him. "Who gave you permission to teach?" the man demanded. "What makes your path better than ours?" The Buddha looked at him kindly and said, "I do not teach to win followers. I teach to help people end their pain. If my words help you, follow them. If not, follow your own way." The man had no answer. He bowed and walked away quietly, humbled by the simplicity of the truth. The Buddha often spoke about compassion. "We all share the same sky," he told his students. "The same sun warms us, and the same earth supports us. When we hurt another, we hurt ourselves. When we show kindness, the world becomes lighter." His words touched hearts everywhere. People began to see that peace did not come from temples or gold, but from how they treated one another. In one small village, there lived a woman who had lost her only child. She was broken with grief and came to the Buddha crying. "Please, Holy One," she begged, "bring my son back to life." The Buddha looked at her gently and said, "Go to every house in this village and bring me a mustard seed from a family that has never known death." The woman hurried away with hope. She knocked on every door, but at each home she heard the same answer. One had lost a father, another a mother, another a sister. By nightfall she returned to the Buddha empty-handed, her eyes filled with tears. "I could not find a single house untouched by death," she said softly. The Buddha nodded. "Now you see, my dear, that death comes to all, but understanding this truth can free you from endless sorrow." The woman bowed and wept, not in despair this time, but in acceptance. As the months and years passed, the Buddha's journey continued. He walked across rivers, forests, and dusty roads. Kings invited him to their palaces, offering gold and gifts, but he accepted nothing for himself. "A rich man may build a temple of stone," he said, "but a kind man builds a temple in the heart." He taught in cities and villages, under trees and in open fields. People sat on the ground around him, men, women, and children listening in silence. They said his words were like cool rain after a long drought. His followers grew in number, but he remained simple. He carried one robe, one bowl, and one endless love for the world. The Buddha's message was the same wherever he went. Everything changes, nothing stays the same. Anger fades, pain heals, joy passes, and life begins again. To understand this is to live in peace. He taught people to meditate, to breathe with awareness, and to watch their thoughts like clouds moving across the sky. Once, a student asked him, "Master, what are you?" The Buddha smiled and replied, "I am awake." Another time, a warrior came to test his patience. He insulted the Buddha with harsh words, calling him foolish and weak. But the Buddha sat quietly, listening with a calm face. When the man finished, the Buddha asked, "If someone offers you a gift and you refuse it, who keeps the gift?" The man frowned. The giver, of course. The Buddha smiled. Then I refuse your anger, and it remains with you. The warrior bowed his head and walked away in shame. The Buddha's teachings began to spread far beyond the lands he walked. His disciples traveled to new kingdoms, sharing his message of compassion and balance. They did not force his words. They simply lived with peace, and others followed their example. Wherever they went, kindness grew like light in the darkness. Even those who once doubted him began to see that his message was not about religion or power. It was about life itself, about love, understanding, and the quiet strength that comes from a calm heart. In time, the Buddha became not only a teacher, but a symbol of hope. His followers no longer saw him as a man, but as a mirror of what every human being could become, awake, kind, and free. And so, his journey continued, not just on the dusty roads of India, but in the hearts of those who listened. His steps became their steps, his peace became their peace, and his light became their guide. The last journey. Many years passed, and the Buddha's name spread across the land. He was now an old man with silver hair and gentle eyes, but his face still shone with the same calm light as when he first sat under the Bodhi tree. His disciples had grown in number. They came from every part of the kingdom, young and old, rich and poor, kings and farmers, men and women. Wherever the Buddha went, peace followed. He no longer needed to teach with many words. Sometimes a single glance or a few sentences were enough to touch someone's heart. His presence was quiet but powerful, like the still surface of a deep river. People said that even the air felt softer around him. But the Buddha knew that his time in this body was coming to an end. He had walked for more than 40 years, teaching compassion and wisdom to all who would listen. His steps were slower now, and his strength was fading, yet his heart remained bright. One day he said to his disciples, "The time has come for me to rest. Let us make one final journey together." They walked north toward a small town called Kusinara. The path was long and dusty, but the Buddha did not complain. He smiled often, stopping to speak kindly to those who came to see him along the way. Villagers offered him food, and children brought flowers. He blessed them all with the same gentle words, "May you be happy, may you be free from suffering." As they reached the forest near Kusinara, the Buddha looked up at the tall trees and said, "This is a peaceful place. Let us stay here for the night." The air was cool, and the sound of birds filled the branches. He lay down on a simple bed made of grass and said softly, "The end of this body is near. But do not be sad. Everything that begins must also end. This is the law of nature." His disciples gathered around him, their hearts heavy with sorrow. Some began to cry quietly. The Buddha looked at them and smiled. "Do not cry, my friends," he said. "All things change. What matters is not how long we live, but how well we live. You must remember the path I have shown you. The truth does not die. It lives in your hearts." One of his closest disciples, Ananda, held his hand and asked, "Master, after you are gone, who will guide us?" The Buddha replied, "Let the truth be your guide. Let your own understanding and kindness lead you. Do not look for another master. Be a light for yourselves." As the night deepened, a soft golden glow seemed to fill the forest. The Buddha's breathing slowed, and his voice grew quiet, yet full of peace. "Remember," he said, "nothing in this world is permanent. Everything that is born will one day pass away. But the spirit of love and wisdom never dies. It moves from heart to heart like a flame that lights another candle. Ananda bowed his head, tears falling onto the Buddha's hand. "We will remember," he whispered. The Buddha closed his eyes. His mind entered deep meditation, calm and bright. He moved through the levels of awareness he had taught his followers, the stages of stillness, peace, and release. Around him, the trees were silent, as if the whole forest was watching. Even the wind stopped to listen. Then, as the first light of dawn touched the sky, the Buddha took his final breath. His face was peaceful, and a small smile rested on his lips. The air was filled with a strange stillness, and the disciples felt as though time itself had stopped. A gentle fragrance filled the air, and soft petals began to fall from the trees, though there was no wind. The forest seemed to weep and rejoice at the same time, mourning the passing of the body, but celebrating the freedom of the spirit. The disciples sat beside his body in silence. None of them spoke for a long time. There was sadness, but also a deep calm. They knew that their teacher had not truly gone. His body had returned to the earth, but his teachings would live forever. When the sun rose fully, they prepared a simple ceremony. They placed his body on a bed of flowers and sang softly the words he had taught them about peace and love. People from nearby villages came to pay their respects. Some brought candles, others brought water or food, and many simply knelt with folded hands. Ananda stood before them and said, "Do not grieve. The Blessed One taught us that everything changes. He has shown us the path that leads beyond birth and death. Let us honor him not with tears, but by living as he lived, with compassion, patience, and understanding." The people nodded, their faces wet with tears but full of light. They watched as the smoke from the funeral fire rose gently into the sky, curling upward like a prayer. It was not the end, but a beginning, the start of a new journey for his teachings. As the years passed, the Buddha's disciples carried his message across the world. They walked barefoot through deserts and mountains, through forests and cities, sharing the path of peace. Temples were built where he had once walked, and his words were written down so they would never be forgotten. But the Buddha's true legacy was not in stone or paper. It was in the hearts of those who practiced his way of kindness. Though centuries have passed, the light of his wisdom still shines. It shines in every act of compassion, every moment of understanding, every breath of peace. And whenever someone sits quietly beneath a tree, closing their eyes to listen to the silence within, the spirit of the Buddha is there, calm, gentle, and awake. The moral, the light within. Many years passed after the Buddha's final journey. The kingdoms that once surrounded him changed. New rulers rose and fell, but his words continued to live in the hearts of people. From India, his teachings spread across mountains, forests, and oceans. They reached faraway lands and were spoken in many tongues, yet their meaning remained the same. Wherever people were tired of anger, fear, and sorrow, they turned to his message and found peace. The Buddha never asked to be worshipped as a god. He had always said, "Do not follow me blindly. Find the truth within yourself." His message was not about temples or rituals, but about the simple, quiet work of the heart. He taught that each person carries within them a small light, a spark of wisdom that can grow brighter through kindness, patience, and understanding. He had shown that peace does not come from wealth, from power, or from escaping the world. Peace begins in the mind. It begins when we stop fighting what we cannot control and start understanding the nature of life itself. Everything changes: people, seasons, even our thoughts and emotions. When we accept change with grace, we stop suffering. Many people still ask, what did the Buddha find under the Bodhi tree? The answer is simple. He did not find something new. He woke up to what was already there, the truth that everything is connected, that love and compassion are the roots of happiness, and that peace is always possible when the heart is open. The Buddha's life reminds us that we do not need to be born special or rich to make a difference. He was once a prince surrounded by gold, but true wisdom came when he let everything go. He discovered that greatness is not about what we own, but about what we give. It is not about being above others, but about understanding them. Sometimes we think peace means silence or a life without problems. But the Buddha taught that peace is not the absence of storms. It is the calm inside the storm. It is the strength to see pain and not be broken by it, to face loss and still choose love. When we learn to sit quietly and breathe, to listen without anger, to act with compassion, we begin to awaken the same light that shone in him. One evening, long after the Buddha's passing, a young man came to an old monk and asked, "Master, where can I find the Buddha now?" The monk smiled and said, "If you look with your eyes, you will see only his statues. But if you look with your heart, you will find him in your kindness, in your patience, and in your peace." The young man bowed deeply, understanding that the Buddha had never truly left. His body was gone, but his spirit had become the quiet voice inside all who seek truth. The Buddha's story is not only about one man who reached enlightenment. It is about every person who has ever asked, "Why is there suffering?" and "How can I find peace?" His journey teaches us that answers do not come from outside. They grow slowly within, like a seed becoming a flower. Each time we choose love over hate, understanding over judgment, or calm over anger, that seed grows. In the modern world, we move quickly. We rush from one moment to another, often forgetting to breathe, to listen, or to be kind. But the Buddha's words still whisper across time, "Be present, be awake, be gentle with all beings." These are not just lessons for monks or holy men. They are lessons for everyone, for students, parents, workers, and dreamers. When you read his story, remember that the Buddha was once like us. He felt confusion, fear, and sadness, but instead of running away from them, he looked deeply into them until he found understanding. And in that understanding, he found freedom. The moral of his life is simple yet powerful. True peace begins with awareness. When you know your thoughts, you can guide them. When you know your heart, you can open it. And when you live with compassion, you create peace not only for yourself, but for everyone around you. So the next time you feel lost or heavy with worry, remember the quiet man who sat under a tree more than 2,000 years ago. Close your eyes. Take a slow breath. Feel the air enter and leave your body. The same breath that once flowed through him now flows through you. The same light that guided him lives within you too. And as you sit in stillness, even for a moment, you may begin to feel what he felt. That deep, wordless peace that comes not from the world outside, but from the quiet truth inside. The Buddha's story is not only a story to listen to, it is an invitation to live gently, to love freely, to understand deeply, and to wake up fully. You have just listened to the story of Buddha, a story that reminds us that peace is not found by escaping life, but by understanding it. Through his journey, we learned that every person carries both light and darkness inside. We all face pain, loss, and confusion, but we also have the power to wake up, to see clearly, and to choose kindness over anger, peace over fear. The Buddha's life teaches us that true wisdom begins when we look within. No matter who we are or where we live, we can all find a quiet strength inside us, the same light that guided him more than 2,000 years ago. If this story touched your heart or helped you learn new English expressions, I invite you to share your thoughts in the comments. What part of this story inspired you the most? If you enjoy stories like this, calm, emotional, and full of meaning, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe to Read and Learn English. Every story we share is written to help you grow, not just in English, but in life. Thank you for listening, and remember, peace begins with one gentle thought.